This is how you can get a vocal sound like Billie Eilish only using Logic's built-in plugins.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know I said I never.
So I've got my dry vocal here.
I want you to stay till I'm in the grave.
The first thing I'm going to do is add some subtle tuning using Logic's pitch correction plugin. So firstly, you want to set it to the key of your song. In this case, it's E minor. And then if you use the response and the tolerance knobs, you can determine how subtle or extreme you want your auto-tune to be. So if you bring the response and tolerance all the way to 0, your auto-tune effect is going to be super obvious and it's going to be like a stylized effect.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
But in the case of this song, I wanted it to be quite subtle, so I landed on a response of 72 milliseconds and the tolerance to around 19 cents. This it before.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
And after.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
So you can slightly hear it, but it's not doing too much, so it's not too obvious. Next in the chain, I'm using some EQ. And firstly, I'm using a high pass filter to cut out any low end rumble or any noise we don't want in the track. Next, I'm ducking at around 320 Hertz, which is kind of the muddy boxiness range here.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know I said I never think I wasn't better alone.
As you can hear, it's just cleaning up the vocal a little bit. This is before.
Birds of a feather, we.
And after.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
Then on this recording in particular, there's an annoying frequency around 600 to 700 Hertz, which sounds like this.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together.
So I'm just ducking that out.
Birds of a feather, we.
Then normally on vocals, there tends to be a harshness around the 2 kilohertz range.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together.
I don't want any of that in my vocals, so I've just ducked it out. Then I noticed this vocal recording is super airy and bright, so I'm just going to tame that down a little bit with a high shelf.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
And this is what it sounds like before.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
And after.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
So you can notice it just cleans up the vocal a little bit before we start doing any real processing. So next on my chain, I've got a de-esser. I actually started with the female vocal split band preset, and I've just tweaked it to suit this vocal.
Better alone. Birds of a feather.
So that's just taming some of the S's that are coming through on the vocal. So this is before.
I said I never.
And after.
I said I never think I wasn't better alone.
So a de-esser works by setting a certain frequency here. Then every time that frequency on the vocal passes the threshold that we set here, it ducks that frequency in volume. So next, to iron out the dynamic range, I'm using a compressor. This is going to help to sit the vocal on top of your mix. So I'm using Logic's vintage opto compressor, which is an emulation of the famous LA2A, which sounds amazing on vocals. So a compressor basically just brings down the volume of anything that passes this threshold we set, which means the overall volume is more leveled out. So I've set the ratio to around 3.1, which determines how much compression the compressor is actually going to do. Then I've got a medium to fast attack and a medium fast release. I then set the threshold, so I'm getting around -5 dBs of gain reduction.
I said I never think I wasn't better alone.
This is before.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
And after.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
As you can hear, it makes the vocal sound more full and more in your face. So finally, on the processing chain, I'm just using another EQ. So I'm ducking out some more muddiness around 266 Hertz. And then I'm ducking out some of this, which we don't want in the track.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
There was also a resonant frequency at around 5.6 kilohertz, which sounded like this.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
So I've just ducked that out. And I've added back a small bit of the air that we ducked out earlier. So before.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together.
And after.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
So that's kind of it with the processing on the actual vocal track. This is what it sounded like before.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
And after,
birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know I said I never.
so now I'm going to move on to some vocal effects. And firstly, I've got a delay set up. I've already set this up, but I'll show you how to do it. So firstly, you want to send your vocal to a new aux track. So to do this in Logic, you want to go down to your sends here, then send it to a new bus. It doesn't matter which one. Then Logic will automatically create you a new aux track. Then if you press the little button next to read here, it will show up in your edit window. So on Billie Eilish's vocal, there's a really obvious 8th note delay. So I'm using Logic's tape delay plugin, and I've set it to 8th notes here.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
I've got the feedback set to around 40%, then I've increased the spread to 40 to add some width to the delay. I'm then using the low cut and high cut to cut out some frequencies I don't want on the delay track, and it sounds like this.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
So now I've noticed that the delay is getting in the way of the lead vocal quite a bit. So to fix this, we're going to do some sidechain compression on the delay track. So in Logic, you want to open up the compressor, and then the first thing you want to do is up here next to sidechain, you want to set it to the input of the delay track, which in my case is bus 2. So this means that the compressor is going to be listening out for any signal that comes through this bus. And then when the signal comes through, the compressor is going to duck the volume of the delay like this.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know.
And then when the vocal stops, the delay fades back up in volume to fill out the gaps. Use the ratio and the threshold to determine how extreme or subtle this effect is, and adjust the attack and release to taste. So this is before.
'Cause it was always you.
And then with the sidechain compression.
'Cause it was always you.
This also helps to keep your vocal right at the front of your mix. Finally, I set up another new aux track, and I'm using the Reverb plugin. And I started with the vocal hall preset, then adjust your decay in size to determine how big or small you want your reverb. Finally, on the reverb aux, I'm using some EQ. This is to keep the reverb out the way of the clean vocal. So I'm using a low pass filter to cut out some of the high end, and I'm ducking some of the muddiness around 300 Hertz. It sounds like this.
'Cause it was always you.
And without.
'Cause it was always you.
And that's it. And this is what everything together sounds like.
Till I rode away, dead and buried.
So this is what the vocal sounded like completely dry.
Till I rode away, dead and buried.
And after.
Till I rode away, dead and buried. Till I'm in the casket you carry.
And this is what it sounds like in context of the track.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know I said I'll never think I wasn't better alone. Can change the weather, might not be forever, but if it's forever, it's even better.
Subscribe for more videos like this.